I spotted it the second I walked in. Round tables, draped in white linen, each one surrounded by a halo of gold-backed chairs, except not a single one had my name. Not a folded card. Not a reserved sign. Nothing. It was almost funny. Almost. I stood there for a moment, clutching the tiny silver clutch in my hand, letting my eyes wander around the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers spilled warm light across the polished floor, catching the sparkle of sequins on strangers' gowns. My heels clicked softly as I stepped forward, scanning for any familiar face, any sign that I belonged here. Once upon a time, not having a seat would have crushed me. I would have smiled politely, pretended I didn't mind, maybe found a quiet corner to disappear into. But that was years ago. The silk of my deep navy dress brushed against my skin as I adjusted my posture. I could feel curious glances landing on me, the kind that whisper, "Who's she?" Then the host tapped the microphone. The room quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, "please welcome tonight's guest of honor, Ms. Emily Carter." A ripple of surprise spread through the crowd. All those faces mid-sentence, mid-sip, turning toward me. And suddenly, every seat in the room felt irrelevant. The sound of my name echoing through the ballroom jolted me back, not to this moment, but to another night years ago. It was a high school banquet, the kind where parents dress up like it's the Oscars and teachers pretend they are keeping score. I was 17, wearing a second-hand dress my mom had found at a thrift store in Henderson. I'd been nominated for a leadership award, and though I tried to play it cool, my stomach buzzed with hope. But when I walked in, the front tables were already filled. The reserved signs all bore other names: cheer captains, debate winners, student body favorites. My name wasn't anywhere, not even at the back. I hovered by the doorway, clutching a flimsy paper program, until Mrs. Wilkins, the principal's assistant, whispered that I could just grab a chair from the stack against the wall. So I did. Alone, in a row behind the potted plants, where no one would notice if I disappeared. That night, they announced the leadership award. It wasn't me. And the girl who won, a friend of a friend, barely made eye contact as she passed my chair. When it was over, I slipped outside into the cool Nevada air and tried not to cry. That's when my grandmother, Ruth Carter, found me. She pressed something small and cold into my palm, her silver locket, worn and smooth with age. Inside was a tiny photograph of her at 20, standing in front of the diner she'd once owned. "Seats don't make you important, Emmy," she'd said, her voice steady. "Your work does. And one day, they'll save you a seat or wish they had." The lump in my throat nearly choked me, but I nodded, clutching the locket so hard it left a faint imprint in my skin. That was the night I decided I'd never wait for someone to make space for me again. I'd build my own table, my own room, my own stage. And maybe, just maybe, one day they'd notice. I left Henderson a month after graduation. 2 duffel bags, $87 in my checking account, and the locket around my neck. Seattle wasn't glamorous. My first apartment was a studio with peeling paint and a shower that only produced scalding or freezing water. I waitressed at a diner on Pike Street, the kind where the coffee is burnt and the tips are small. But I kept my eyes open. Every table I served felt like a window into another world, people talking about startups, marketing pitches, business deals. They were speaking a language I didn't know yet, but I wanted to learn. One afternoon, a woman named Patricia Hayes came in. Perfectly tailored blazer, red lipstick, and an energy that made the whole place bend toward her. She asked for coffee black. I brought it, and somehow, in the few minutes she waited for her order, I told her I wanted more from life. Not in a desperate way, more like a quiet confession. She smiled and slid her business card across the table. "Call me. If you're willing to work, I can teach you." Patricia wasn't easy on me. She had me running errands, answering phones, sitting in on meetings I barely understood. But she also gave me books to read, podcasts to listen to, and the kind of feedback that could slice you open and stitch you up in the same sentence. The first year, I worked 2 jobs, her assistant by day, waitress by night. My friends from home thought I'd lost my mind. My family assumed I was barely scraping by. I didn't correct them. Explaining my grind felt pointless when they'd already written me off. But little by little, I built something. I learned marketing strategies, negotiation skills, and the art of reading a room before I ever opened my mouth. I started freelancing, small clients at first, local shops needing better branding, restaurants wanting social media presence. I'll never forget the first big one, a boutique hotel downtown. They paid me $2,500 for a campaign that tripled their bookings in a month. I celebrated alone in my apartment, eating takeout noodles straight from the carton, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. By my mid-20s, I had an LLC, a small team of freelancers and clients in 3 states. I traveled quietly, posted only the most generic updates online, and never bragged when I signed a big contract. My old classmates still thought I was probably still in food service. My family thought I was doing okay. And I liked it that way. Success, I learned, tastes sweeter when no one sees it coming. Every time I doubted myself, I'd open that silver locket and look at my grandmother's face. Her words would echo back to me. Your work makes you important. I was working. And one day they'd know. The applause was hesitant at first, the kind of clapping people do when they're not sure why they're clapping. I walked toward the stage, the train of my navy dress whispering against the floor. Every step felt deliberate, every breath measured. I could feel eyes on me, some curious, some confused, a few downright uncomfortable. The ballroom was a picture of old money elegance, towering arrangements of white lilies, a ceiling painted with gold leaf patterns, waiters in crisp black vests gliding between tables with trays of champagne. The air smelled faintly of citrus and candle wax. And there, scattered around the room, were the same kinds of people who'd once kept me on the sidelines, the polished, self-assured faces that never imagined I could be anything more than background. At the front table, I spotted them. My cousin Allison, who once told me I'd probably marry a mechanic if I was lucky. Mr. Thompson, my old high school counselor, who had suggested I skip college because it's not for everyone. And 3 of my former classmates, whispering behind manicured hands. I reached the podium, my heart steady, my fingers brushing the cool metal edge of the microphone. Good evening, I began, my voice carrying across the room. I'll be honest, when I walked in tonight and saw there wasn't a seat saved for me, I almost laughed. Because I've been here before. Not here in this beautiful ballroom, but in this moment, this feeling. A few people shifted in their chairs. Years ago, I attended an event where I wasn't given a seat. Not because there wasn't room, but because no one thought I belonged at the table. And for a long time, I believed them. I let that empty space tell me I wasn't worthy. I paused, letting the silence stretch just enough. But here's the thing about empty seats. You can wait for someone to offer you one, or you can build your own table. And I did. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I'm Emily Carter, founder and CEO of Carter & Company. Marketing. We've launched campaigns in 8 states, employed over 40 creatives, and helped raise millions for nonprofits, including the very foundation hosting tonight's gala. I glanced toward the head table. In fact, when the board needed a major sponsor to secure this venue, I wrote the check. All at once, the energy shifted. The whispers stopped. Faces flushed, some with surprise, others with something sharper. I didn't share my journey while it was happening. I didn't post about my struggles or my wins. I just worked. And now, standing here, I can tell you, the seat I needed was never theirs to give. Applause swelled. Real, this time. I caught sight of Allison's stunned face, Mr. Thompson's awkward clapping, my classmates frozen like they'd just seen a ghost. It was almost too perfect. When the applause finally faded, I stepped away from the podium and moved toward the tables. It wasn't planned, but the urge to look each of them in the eye was too strong to ignore. I stopped first at the head table. Allison's wine glass trembled in her hand. I remember, I said softly, how you once told me I'd have to marry up if I wanted a good life. Funny thing is, I married no one and built it myself. But if you want my help launching that boutique you've been talking about for years, I'll fund it on one condition. You work the floor yourself for the first year. No hiding behind employees. Learn your customers. Earn your respect. Her cheeks flushed, but she nodded. Next, I turned to Mr. Thompson. You told me college wasn't for me. That maybe I should look at more realistic options. Well, Mr. Thompson, I've created a scholarship fund for students in Henderson who don't test well, but who have ideas, grit, and drive. You'll be on the selection committee if you agree to mentor one student each year for free. His Adam's apple bobbed. Yes. Of course. At the next table, my former classmates sat stiffly. I smiled. You once laughed when I said I wanted to start my own business. Told me I'd burn out in a month. So here's my offer. I'll hire you as freelancers for a major campaign. The pay will be fair, but the deadlines will be brutal. If you want to prove yourselves, this is your chance. Their eyes darted to each other, unsure whether to take the olive branch or choke on it. I straightened, scanning the room. These conditions aren't about revenge. They're about change. About proving to yourselves that you're capable of more than the small boxes people try to put you in. I lived in one of those boxes for far too long. Patricia, my mentor, was watching from the back of the room, a proud smile tugging at her lips. I thought of my grandmother's locket resting against my collarbone. You can keep waiting for someone to hand you a seat, I said, my voice lifting again so everyone could hear. Or you can stand up, build your own, and invite others in. The choice is yours. But if you want my help, you play by my rules. The air in the ballroom was different now, heavier with possibility than with judgment. I could see it in their faces. Some weren't ready, but some were. In the weeks after the gala, the follow-through began. Allison sent me a photo of her standing behind the counter of her new boutique, hair tied back, no makeup, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She looked happy. Tired but happy. Mr. Thompson emailed me his notes from his first scholarship meeting. He'd written in all caps, "This kid reminds me of you." That one made me cry. Even two of my former classmates took the freelance work. They delivered on time every time. One of them even apologized for the way she'd treated me back in high school. I didn't need it, but I accepted it. Change wasn't instant, and it wasn't universal. Some people stayed the same, still stuck in their old ways, still waiting for someone else to give them permission. But that was okay. I'd learned a long time ago that you can't save everyone. One rainy afternoon, I sat in my office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Seattle skyline, and opened the drawer where I kept my grandmother's locket. The silver was worn smooth now, but inside, her tiny photograph still smiled back at me. I remembered that night outside the high school banquet. The lump in my throat. The sting of being invisible. The way her voice had cut through all of it. Seats don't make you important. Your work does. I traced the edges of the locket with my thumb, feeling the weight of everything it had seen me through. The next day, I mailed it to my niece in Henderson, along with a note. One day, you'll walk into a room where they didn't save you a seat. Take it anyway. That evening, as the sun sank behind the city and the lights began to sparkle across the water, I thought about all the tables I'd built for myself. Some were big enough for a crowd. Some were just for me. But each one had been mine. And I realized, with a quiet smile, that the truest victory wasn't the applause, or the shocked faces, or even a title of guest of honor. It was knowing I didn't need a seat to belong.